Good morning. I'm David Breeden. I'm the Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, and we are a historically humanist congregation. This is Coffee and Wisdom, in which we look at some of the currents that have led to contemporary humanist and also just generally American religious thought. And today I would like to back up a little bit because we've been talking about people that I've been calling mystics and or cranks, looking at the late 19th century into the early 20th century, the ideas that lead into a lot of the American popular religious thinking. One of the things that's going on during this time period is the development of psychology. We need to look at Freud very specifically, but today I wanted to look at William James, 1842 to 1910, the first psychology professor at Harvard University, and one of the great theorists concerning the mystical experience and religious experiences in general. His great book is The Varieties of Religious Experience, a Study in Human Nature, published in 1902, just slips into the 20th century. The lectures that it's based on from Edinburgh University were made in 1901 when he was invited to talk about religious experience there for a series of lectures. On any list of the top 5 nonfiction books of the 20th century, The Varieties of Religious Experience almost always makes that list. It is one of the great informative books. In theology schools, it's a start for the discussion very often of what the religious experience is. For pros and cons, there's a lot of problems with what James was saying, but we'll get there. Notice the subtitle. The Varieties of Religious Experience, a Study in Human Nature. So William James is going to look at the mystical experience, the spiritual experience, as subjective in the human mind. And that's important to know. It's also important to know, of course, he has a brother, Henry James, and their father was a mystic who pretty regularly had mystical experiences. So the boys grew up in a household where dad saw ghosts and had mystical experiences. So this was not an academic exercise alone for him. So he's going to think this through, and the summary I'm going to give you today is from 2 chapters, 2 lectures that come about 2/3 into the lectures, both titled Mysticism. 4 marks of the mystic state, according to James. One is inevitability. You can't say what it means. And this is absolutely critical to the whole idea of mysticism, is that it can't be stated. The words just don't get there. Another mark of the mystic state is noetic quality. That is that I know what I experienced is the truth. I have discovered the truth. All right, noetic quality. Also transience. That is that, you can't live in the mystical experience for very long at a time. And then passivity, which is probably not a good word for what he's trying to say, but that the individual's will has gone away. Now, you do notice that if you've been following along with this development of mysticism and spirituality within the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when people began to compare Hinduism with Christianity, etc., if you notice these things, one of the constants is that the ego is the problem, and that's coming directly out of Hinduism. And one of the marks of the mystic state is that egoism is gone. All right. Here's one of the covers. If you haven't read the book or you want to have a copy, I mean, the number of paperback copies of this book is extraordinary. 1902 publication, and it has never been out of print. It's that important to the way people think about the religious experience. So in these chapters on mysticism, James considers psychoactive drugs, and as we know, following along, psychoactive drugs were already very important to a lot of people in the mid-19th to late 19th centuries. Do they reveal any hidden mystical knowledge? It was a question then, as it is now. He also looks at Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And again, he's reacting to this mixture that the various spiritual people like Madame Blavatsky are dealing with during this time period. However, he doesn't consider the traditions themselves or the practices. He just views them as subjective experience builders. So the way I would look at it is that he is saying that there is a hardwired religious experience in humanity, and then the software decides what kind of experience it's described as, a Hindu experience, a Buddhist experience, etc. And again, that's very important because James is looking at this from a totally human psychic thing. So here are the characteristics of the mystical experience. Number one, it's optimistic. People tend to have happy feelings after they have mystical experiences. And also it's pantheistic. And by that he means that we feel one with the planet when we have mystical experiences. Now, James did claim to have mystical experiences, although he wasn't as prone to them as some other people. And this is something he talks about. Now, these mystical experiences have some other characteristics. One is they convince the individual who has them, oh, I know the truth. But guess what? Others are not convinced by that particular subjective experience very often. So you can go preaching from the street corners, you're the new truth you have discovered, but other people are going to say, wait a minute, I'm not sure that's how it is, because they're living in their own subjective realities, of course. And there is no indication that the experience is more true than scientific inquiry. This is very important to James's project to say that, you know, all of this is in the human mind. He discusses theism some in this series of lectures. He comes down on, you know, as an agnostic, basically, within these ideas. He does have some qualitative judgments on traditions, but not much. So that these experiences of truth don't trump science in any way, he says. This is a self-portrait of James, by the way. The experience may have morbid origins, and the experience does not indicate the reality of anything supernatural. Again, being looking at these things from a psychic viewpoint, maybe that has to do with some kind of PTSD. And I mean, nowadays, this is a central place of research. Serious research is the trauma factors that figure into mystical experiences. Do people who have extreme trauma have more likelihood of having mystical experiences? This is still very much an open part of inquiry. This is where he comes down finally. Were one asked to characterize the life of religion in the broadest and most general terms possible, one might say that it consists of the belief that there is an unseen order, and our supreme good lies in harmoniously adjusting ourselves thereto. Brilliant look at religion and what it's all about, because notice that this can be used from a tradition that has the supernatural as its basis, foundation, but also one that has science and naturalism as its basis. That is, that religion consists of deciding upon what the hidden order is, and then living into that order. And if you've been following along for several weeks now, you know that many traditions that are non-theistic also do this, Taoism especially. So it's a very good, I think, definition of religion to deal with. And we'll talk a little bit more about the psychological and the mystical tomorrow. There's lots of stuff out there on William James, and he's absolutely fascinating guy in the way that he was trying to grapple with all of these new strains of supernatural and spiritual ideas that were floating around during his lifetime. Thanks a lot for listening. You can help us out by going to PayPal or firstunitarian.org/donate. We appreciate your help in keeping the voice of humanism strong. And to find out more about First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis and humanism, go to YouTube. Find us. We have 2 channels there. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thanks a lot, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Thank you.